The average family is quietly hemorrhaging hundreds of dollars at the grocery store every single month, and most of them have absolutely no idea it's happening. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. You don't need a bigger paycheck to eat well. You need a smarter basket. 21 specific items exist that punch so far above their price tags, they essentially fund themselves through the nutrition, satiety, and versatility they deliver every single week. These aren't exotic health foods or trendy superfoods. They're humble, overlooked staples sitting right in front of you at every store. And by the time this is over, you'll never look at your shopping cart the same way again. Let's start with something so ordinary that most people walk right past it without a second thought. Bananas. Sounds basic, right? But stay with me here, because the numbers behind this fruit are genuinely hard to argue with. Per pound, bananas are among the cheapest items in the entire produce section, sometimes costing only a few cents per individual piece. That alone should make them a weekly non-negotiable. But the cost is only part of the story. What you're actually getting when you pick up that bunch is a reliable source of complex carbohydrates and natural sugars that your body can convert into usable energy efficiently and cleanly. Layer on top of that a meaningful dose of potassium, a mineral your heart and muscles depend on, and you start to see why this fruit earns its place in every smart shopper's cart. When you grab bananas that are still slightly firm and greenish at the tips, you're also getting something called resistant starch. That compound behaves like a prebiotic inside your gut, feeding the beneficial bacteria your digestive system relies on to stay balanced. Here's a practical trick that most shoppers overlook entirely. Don't buy all your bananas at the same ripeness level. Grab a mix, some firm and green, some yellow and ready. Eat the ripe ones first during the early days of the week, then let the firmer ones catch up. That simple strategy eliminates waste and keeps fresh fruit accessible all 7 days. And when a couple of them go too soft and spotted, don't throw them away, freeze them. They become the base of an incredibly smooth blended drink or the natural sweetener in a homemade baked recipe. Versatile, affordable, and nutritionally solid, bananas belong in every cart every week without question. Now let's talk about something that sparks more passionate debate among nutrition circles than almost any other food. Are eggs really that good? The answer, backed by decades of research, is an emphatic yes. What you get from a single egg is roughly 6 grams of complete protein, meaning it contains all the essential amino acids your body can't manufacture on its own. But that's not the whole picture. Eggs also deliver vitamin D, vitamin B12, and selenium, all packed into a small shell that costs you a fraction of what you'd spend on most other protein sources. Their versatility is what makes them genuinely indispensable. Eggs don't belong only at breakfast. Scramble them in the morning for a fast, filling plate. Hard-boil a batch early in the week and keep them in the fridge as a ready-to-grab protein source anytime hunger strikes. Drop them into a grain bowl for dinner, fold them into a stir-fry, or use them in baking when you need binding and structure. The protein content also does something crucial for your overall food budget. It keeps you full. Longer satiety means fewer impulse snacks and fewer unnecessary purchases throughout the day, which adds up to real savings over time. Buy the largest carton your budget allows. Stored cold, they last for weeks. The math on eggs is almost embarrassingly favorable. What should you build those eggs on top of? That's where brown rice enters the conversation. And if you've been dismissing it as bland or boring, let's correct that right now. Brown rice holds a nutritional advantage that its white counterpart simply cannot match. The outer bran layer and the inner germ are both preserved, which means you're getting more fiber, more B vitamins, and more trace minerals with every serving. White rice has had those layers stripped away during processing. What remains is mostly just starch. A single large bag of brown rice can feed a household for weeks. That alone makes it one of the highest value foundations you can keep in your kitchen. The real power move here is batch cooking. Set aside an hour once or twice a week, cook a large pot, divide it into portions, and freeze them. Now you've got a ready-to-heat base for nearly any meal you can imagine. Grain bowls, curry dishes, stir-fries, stuffed peppers, and everything in between. Because brown rice is built from slow-digesting complex carbohydrates, it releases energy gradually rather than flooding your bloodstream all at once. That means sustained energy and fewer afternoon crashes that send you reaching for expensive convenience foods. Always buy plain brown rice, not the pre-seasoned or instant varieties. Those cost more and hand control of sodium and additives over to someone else. Speaking of building real, lasting fullness, let's talk about dried beans. And yes, we're talking about the ones you soak overnight, not just the canned variety, though those have their place too. Dried beans represent one of the most extraordinary budget foods. A $2 bag, once soaked and cooked, transforms into enough servings to anchor multiple full meals throughout the week. You're getting both plant protein and dietary fiber from a single source, and that combination is powerful for a very specific reason. Protein and fiber working together create a prolonged satiety that lasts for hours, not the kind of full feeling that disappears 45 minutes after eating, but genuine, sustained satisfaction that keeps hunger quiet for a long time. Here's the system that makes this effortless. Soak a bag overnight, cook a large batch the following morning, then divide and freeze individual portions. You now have beans on demand all week without any additional effort. Use them in soups, tuck them into tacos, scatter them over salads, or mash them into a homemade spread. Black beans, pinto beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, each one brings a slightly different texture and flavor profile, which keeps your meals from feeling repetitive. Swap beans in place of meat even just once or twice per week and watch what happens to your grocery total. The savings compound quickly, and your fiber intake improves dramatically at the same time. Now let's address protein from the animal kingdom with something most people underestimate: chicken thighs. Not chicken breasts, thighs. And here's why that distinction matters more than you might expect. Thighs are consistently cheaper per pound than breasts at virtually every grocery store, but they also happen to be more flavorful and significantly harder to overcook. The slightly higher fat content keeps the meat moist and tender through roasting, braising, slow cooking, and grilling. For maximum savings, go for the bone-in, skin-on variety. Yes, there's a little more prep involved, but the price difference is worth every minute of that extra effort. When you spot the large family packs on sale or nearing their date, grab them, divide them into meal-sized portions, and freeze them immediately. Chicken thighs absorb marinades exceptionally well. Season them the night before, let the flavors develop overnight, and you've got a deeply flavorful protein ready to cook without any day of effort. Roast a pan of them alongside whatever vegetables you have on hand, and you've built a complete meal from almost nothing. Few proteins deliver this level of flavor and versatility at this price point. Here's a question worth sitting with for a moment. What single food could you add to almost any meal, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and instantly make it more nutritious, more filling, and more interesting? If your answer isn't oats, it should be. Oats are one of the most nutritionally dense foods available per dollar spent anywhere in the grocery store. A large container can last for weeks and costs just a few dollars. What's inside that container is beta-glucan, a specific type of soluble fiber that has been shown in research to support healthy cholesterol levels and promote a prolonged sense of fullness. The slow-release energy that comes from oats is ideal for mornings when you need to stay focused and functional for hours without thinking about food. Cook them on the stovetop and top them with whatever fruit, nut butter, or seeds you have available. Prep overnight oats the evening before by combining raw oats with liquid and leaving them in the fridge. No cooking required. You can also blend oats into a powder and use them as a flour substitute in pancake batter or baking recipes. For the absolute best value, skip the flavored instant packets. They cost more and contain added sugar and sodium that plain oats simply don't need. Buy plain rolled oats or steel-cut oats and season them yourself. Let's shift now to a food that people either love passionately or barely think about: canned tomatoes. This might be the most underappreciated pantry staple on this entire list. A single can of crushed or diced tomatoes is the starting point for pasta sauces, soups, stews, shakshuka, chili, and braised dishes of all kinds. That one can, costing less than $2 in most stores, contains lycopene, vitamin C, and potassium. Cooked tomatoes actually release more lycopene than raw ones, which means canned tomatoes might edge out fresh tomatoes nutritionally in certain applications. The strategic approach here is stocking multiple cans whenever they go on sale. They have a long shelf life and take up minimal space. When you have canned tomatoes in the pantry, a satisfying meal is always within reach, even on the nights when the fridge looks nearly empty. Combine them with dried beans or lentils, some spices, and whatever vegetables you have available, and you've built a filling, nutritious dinner for a fraction of restaurant prices.
Now, let's address frozen vegetables because they deserve far more respect than they typically receive. There's a persistent myth that frozen vegetables are nutritionally inferior to fresh ones. That myth is wrong, and the science is clear on this. Frozen vegetables are harvested at their peak ripeness and flash frozen almost immediately. That process locks in nutrients that are actually lost progressively in fresh produce as it travels from farm to distribution center to store shelf to your refrigerator. A bag of frozen spinach, broccoli, peas, or mixed vegetables costs a fraction of fresh equivalents and lasts for months in your freezer. Nothing goes to waste.
You pull out exactly what you need and the rest stays preserved. Add them to scrambled eggs, stir them into soups, drop them into a grain bowl, or roast them from frozen in a hot oven. The flexibility is remarkable. When you build a habit of reaching for frozen vegetables as a default rather than an afterthought, you drastically reduce the produce waste that silently inflates grocery bills week after week. Have you ever added up how much you spend on protein throughout a single month? For most households, it's the single largest category of grocery spending. That's exactly why canned tuna deserves a featured spot in this conversation. For $1 to $2, you get roughly 20 grams of complete protein and a meaningful dose of omega-3 fatty acids that support heart and brain function. There's no cooking involved, no prep required, and no refrigeration needed until the can is opened. Mix it with a little olive oil and lemon juice and serve it over greens. Combine it with cooked pasta for a quick, high-protein meal. Form it into pan-fried patties with breadcrumbs and egg. Fold it into a wrap with whatever vegetables you have on hand. The only real limitation with canned tuna is variety, which you solve by combining it with different ingredients every time you use it. Keep 6 to 8 cans in your pantry at all times, and you'll never find yourself without a fast, affordable, protein-rich meal option regardless of what else is in the house. Let's talk about something that gets used every day in most kitchens but rarely gets the recognition it deserves: lentils. Unlike dried beans, lentils don't require any soaking. You rinse them, drop them into water or broth, and they're fully cooked in under 30 minutes. That convenience factor alone sets them apart. But the nutrition is what makes them truly impressive. Lentils are loaded with plant protein, iron, folate, and fiber. That combination supports energy, healthy blood, and digestive function all at once. Brown lentils work beautifully in hearty soups and stews. Red lentils break down into a creamy, thick texture that's perfect for dal, curries, and blended soups. Green lentils hold their shape better during cooking, making them ideal for salads and grain bowls. A 1-pound bag costs less than $2 in most grocery stores and yields enough cooked lentils for multiple complete meals. If you're not already using lentils weekly, you're leaving one of the most efficient nutrition-to-cost ratios on the grocery store shelf behind every single time you shop. Now we arrive at a staple that's been a cornerstone of human nutrition for thousands of years: peanut butter. A standard jar provides a surprisingly long supply of healthy fat, plant protein, and caloric density that supports sustained energy between meals. It's one of the few foods that delivers genuine staying power in a single spoonful. Spread it on whole grain bread, stir it into oatmeal, blend it into a smoothie, or use it as the base for a savory sauce over noodles or roasted vegetables. For the best value, buy the largest jar available and choose varieties where peanuts are the only or primary ingredient. The natural separation you'll notice on top is normal, just stir it back in. Avoid the heavily processed versions loaded with added sugars and hydrogenated oils when a cleaner, cheaper alternative is sitting right next to them on the shelf. Per gram of protein and healthy fat, few foods compete with peanut butter at this price point. What about when you want to add richness and depth to a dish without spending much? That's where sweet potatoes come in, and they consistently outperform expectations at every level. Sweet potatoes are cheap, widely available, and loaded with beta-carotene, the compound your body converts into vitamin A, which supports eye health and immune function. They also contain vitamin C, potassium, and a notable amount of fiber. Their natural sweetness comes from complex carbohydrates that digest slowly, providing steady energy rather than a rapid spike. Roast them whole until caramelized and soft. Cube them and toss them in olive oil before roasting with spices. Mash them as a side dish. Slice them thin and bake into crispy chips. Dice them and add to soups, curries, or grain bowls. Sweet potatoes play well with savory and sweet flavors equally, which makes them one of the most adaptable vegetables in your entire kitchen. Buy them by the bag when possible. The per unit cost drops significantly, and they keep for weeks in a cool, dark spot. Here's something to think about.
How many meals do you currently build that have no real flavor foundation? That's the gap that onions fill, quietly and inexpensively in kitchens all over the world. Onions are the starting point of countless dishes across nearly every culinary tradition that exists. They cost almost nothing per pound and last for weeks when stored properly in a cool, ventilated space. They also contain quercetin, a compound with antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties that makes them worth eating beyond their role as a flavor builder. Yellow onions are the most versatile. Dice them as a base for soups, stews, and sauces. Caramelize them slowly in a pan until deeply golden and sweet. Slice them raw over tacos or salads. Pickle them quickly in vinegar for a sharp, bright topping that elevates. Red onions work especially well raw, adding color and bite to fresh preparations. White onions bring a slightly sharper flavor that works well in cooked dishes. Regardless of which variety you reach for, onions are foundational. A kitchen without them is working with one hand tied behind its back. And then there's garlic, which transforms any savory dish with almost no effort and almost no cost. For less than $1, a single bulb contains multiple individual cloves, each one carrying a concentrated punch of bold flavor that very few other ingredients can replicate. Garlic has also been studied extensively for its potential to support immune function and cardiovascular health, making it something that earns its place in your diet far beyond what its modest price tag suggests. For the strongest flavor and the best value, always buy whole bulbs rather than the pre-minced versions in jars. The jarred option tends to cost more and delivers noticeably less depth. Peel and chop fresh cloves and add them to pasta sauces, roasted dishes, stir-fries, soups, marinades, and dressings. Roast entire heads until the cloves turn soft and golden brown and mellow, then spread the result onto bread or stir it into mashed vegetables. Use garlic raw if you want intensity and maximum potential wellness benefits. Store your bulbs in a cool, dry, well-ventilated spot away from direct light, and they'll stay fresh for weeks. Small in size, enormous in impact. Let's come back to dairy for a moment and talk about a food that works in more daily contexts than most people ever actually explore: yogurt. Plain yogurt, not the flavored single-serve cups, is a nutritional overachiever. You get protein, calcium, and live probiotic cultures all in one container. Buying a large plain tub costs significantly less per serving than buying individual flavored cups, and it puts you in complete control of what gets added to it. Top it with fruit and a handful of granola for breakfast. Blend it into a smoothie for extra creaminess and protein. Use it in place of sour cream as a topping or condiment. Mix it with herbs and garlic for a quick, fresh sauce. Marinate chicken or fish in it to tenderize the protein before cooking. The live bacterial cultures present in plain yogurt actively support your gut microbiome, which research increasingly connects to overall immune function and long-term health outcomes. If Greek-style yogurt is similarly priced at your store, it contains even more protein per serving and makes the value proposition even stronger. Whole grain bread is one of those daily staples that makes a quiet difference every single week, not because bread is miraculous on its own, but because it provides a fast, accessible vehicle for combining other nutritious, affordable ingredients into complete meals in under 5 minutes. The distinction worth making here is between whole grain or whole wheat bread and white bread. Whole grain options deliver more fiber and more nutrients because the bran and germ haven't been stripped away during processing. Check the ingredient list when you're at the store. The first item should read whole wheat flour or whole grain flour, not enriched white flour. Toast it for breakfast with a spread of peanut butter or mashed avocado. Build sandwiches for lunch. Cube day-old slices into homemade croutons or stuffing. When you spot a loaf on reduced for quick sale pricing, buy multiple and freeze them. They defrost on the counter in minutes or go straight from freezer into toaster without losing quality. Store-brand whole grain bread performs nearly identically to name-brand versions at a noticeably lower price. Make that swap consistently and it adds up. Now let's close with a kitchen staple that does double duty, both as a cooking fat and as a genuine contributor to heart health: olive oil. A bottle might seem like a bigger upfront spend than a cheaper vegetable oil, but the math changes when you consider how long it lasts and what it actually does for you. Olive oil is rich in monounsaturated fats, the kind associated with supporting healthier cholesterol balance when used in place of saturated fat sources. Use it for sautéing vegetables, roasting proteins and produce, whisking into homemade salad dressings, drizzling over finished dishes to add richness, and building marinades. A small amount goes a long way in terms of both flavor and function. Buying a larger bottle almost always brings the per ounce cost down significantly compared to smaller containers, and because you'll use it in small quantities, that larger bottle will last for quite some time. It's the kind of pantry staple that returns far more in flavor and nutrition than its sticker price would suggest. Let's tie everything together here, because there's a larger principle running underneath every single item on this list. The foods that serve you best on a budget are almost never the ones marketed as premium, convenient, or specially formulated. They're the ones with centuries of use behind them, the ones that appear in the cuisines of cultures that built extraordinary food traditions without enormous budgets. Beans, grains, eggs, root vegetables, alliums, preserved proteins, fermented dairy, these are the building blocks that have sustained human health and energy for generations. Cheese rounds out this list as one more food that punches above its weight.
A block of cheese shredded at home costs substantially less than pre-shredded bags and stays fresher for longer. Melt it over eggs, fold it into quesadillas, layer it into sandwiches, or pair it with crackers for a snack that delivers both protein and fat to keep hunger at bay. Because the flavor is concentrated and bold, you don't need large amounts to feel satisfied. A small portion of good cheese goes further than a larger portion of something bland. And potatoes, perhaps the most quietly powerful food on this entire list. A 5-pound bag costs just a few dollars and provides the foundation for an enormous variety of meals. Bake them until the skins are crisp and the insides are light and fluffy. Boil and mash them. Cut into wedges and roast until golden. Slice thin and bake into crispy chips. When potatoes are cooked and then cooled before eating, they develop resistant starch, the same compound we talked about in bananas, which feeds beneficial gut bacteria and promotes a prolonged sense of fullness. Dice cold leftover potatoes and pan-fry them for a fast breakfast hash, or add chunks to a soup to thicken it naturally. Versatile, satisfying, and remarkably affordable. Here's the honest summary of everything covered today. These 21 items represent a complete nutritional framework built entirely from affordable, accessible foods that are available in virtually every grocery store on the planet. Protein from eggs, chicken thighs, canned tuna, lentils, beans, and peanut butter, complex carbohydrates from oats, brown rice, sweet potatoes, and potatoes, healthy fats from olive oil, peanut butter, and cheese, fiber and micronutrients from frozen vegetables, canned tomatoes, onions, garlic, bananas, and yogurt, structural foundations from whole grain bread, and everything else that holds a meal together. None of these require a special store, a premium price point, or advanced cooking skills. They require only a shopping list, a small amount of planning, and the willingness to build your meals from real, whole ingredients rather than expensive processed shortcuts. The families and individuals who eat well on modest budgets aren't doing something complicated. They're doing something simple consistently. They're buying the same dependable items week after week and turning them into nourishing, satisfying meals with what they know works. If any part of this breakdown helped you think differently about how you stock your kitchen, do one quick thing right now. Hit that like button and show some love to my channel. Your support helps this content reach more people who are trying to make smarter choices with their grocery dollars. Let us know in the comments which of these 21 staples is already a fixture in your weekly cart, and which one you're going to add starting this week. Every smart cart starts with a single better choice, and you've already made one today.